Welcome to Writers Blockbusters, the show where we treat the final edit of the movie like the script. I'm one of your hosts, Bob Rose, and I'm at Thundergrunt Bob on all relevant social medias. And right now, Jamie's going to introduce himself.
I'm on the spotlight. I am Jamie Nash. I am the writer of Save the Cat Writes for TV and the Save the Cat Beat Sheet workbook. I am also a screenwriter, and that's all I got to say. You can find me at the Twitter. On the Twitter.
You're like Al Pacino introducing the best picture.
And the winner is Kung Fu Panda.
Right.
The Twitter is... find me on the Twitter at Jamie_Nash.
Okay, Jimmy.
I am Jimmy George. I am a screenwriter and script consultant, and you can find me on the Twitter at Jimmy R. George.
I just get sick of calling it like the thing formerly called the Twitter, or
right.
The X.
The prince of social media.
We're calling it Twitter.
I'm going to call it the Twitter from now on. The Twitter.
Twitter's good.
Yeah.
Today we're obviously we chose this movie. I think I suggested it because Kung Fu Panda 4 is out in theaters, and we want to celebrate that, and also Tenacious D's cover of Britney Spears' "Hit Me Baby One More Time." Obviously, it's a really great cover. Anyway, before we get into our talking points, let's go around and just talk about our reaction to the movie or our relationship with the movie for each of us. Let's start with Jimmy this time.
Okay, so this is a first time watch for me.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and I loved it. I didn't expect it. I saved this, and I don't want to go off the rails here, but the thing that I didn't expect the most out of the watch is how much it reminded me. Like, I can see its influence on The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi more than anything. Now, granted, maybe they're all playing with kung fu genre tropes that I'm not familiar with.
Star Wars is literally based on kung fu.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. But like Poe is I'm talking about Poe. By the way, one of the characters in Force Awakens' name is Poe.
I didn't even think of that.
The fact that when we meet Poe in this movie, he's a kung fu fanboy that has handmade action figures, and he's pretending to be a kung fu master. And when we meet Rey, she has handmade like Luke Skywalker action figure and is playing with them and is like basically a Jedi fangirl. And so is Kylo Ren. He's a Jedi fanboy, right? I thought that was weird. And then like the death of Oogway. What are you saying, James?
It sounds like you're angling for a holdover style lawsuit.
No, I'm not saying ripoff. I'm saying the writers of JJ and Ryan seemed like they were inspired by this, or like the death of Oogway is exactly aesthetically like the death of Luke Skywalker in Force Awakens, and even the shard for Tai Lung is like exactly the same as the shard for Kylo Ren. Like the master saw the future of the guy being the evil villain, and then went to strike him, and and then that's what led to the villain becoming the villain. It's exactly the same.
It's the same.
Anyway.
It's a better movie than all three of the sequel movies, but whatever.
Anyway, I was really like, whoa, this is very strange because this movie came way before those. But again, I'm going to acknowledge that it's probably just kung fu genre tropes with new paint. So anyway, I love the movie.
I didn't even think of any of that, Jimmy. No. Maybe because I try to forget those movies, but like that's awesome that you put that out. It's really great. Jamie.
I don't have any huge like usually I go off in some long rant. This is one that I saw, I liked. That's about all I got to say about it.
I realized, Jamie, this is another attempt for us to make you watch martial arts related kids material. Because we didn't do the new Ninja Turtles because of scheduling.
We had it listed, and we had it listed.
But every time I feel like we like push Jamie into watching stuff, I was like, when I said Kung Fu Panda, I was like, oh, that's kind of like a Ninja Turtle animals doing martial arts
in this
kids.
In this case, at least I had seen it before.
Yeah.
This is one I had seen. I don't think I saw this one in the theaters, even though I'm kind of a person that for a very long time I saw every Pixar movie and every DreamWorks movie. I
Yeah,
just saw
yeah.
them all. And I know I saw this in that initial run. And over the last 5 to 10 years, not so much, but at least the first 10 to 15 years of these movies, I saw everyone. And this was one of them. And like I always say about animation, I think they're the most like instructive. If you want to learn structure and all these things, they're like great movies to watch to kind of figure all that stuff out because they're really easy to identify, the things we talk about all the time on this podcast.
And probably because so much planning and
It's
pre-production goes in, it's like it
yeah,
has to be tight, right?
it's because they get so many iterations, they can almost make them perfect in some
Yeah.
ways,
As far as my relationship with this, I obviously loved it back in 2008. I was a Jack Black fan from the 90s when the Tenacious D, remember the Tenacious D TV show on HBO that was like 6 episodes?
Mhm.
I remember seeing
I have
that.
the DVD.
Yeah, right. I remember seeing that and coming into high school and be like, "You guys got to see this thing I saw. I don't even know what it is." So I've been a hardcore Jack Black fan forever. So I feel like this, like he had like a dip before this, and then Kung Fu Panda put him back on the trajectory of what he is now. So this was great to see, and
I don't know. Didn't in the middle he had like Gulliver's Travels, and
there was a Gulliver's
yeah.
Travels period.
Yeah, where's School of Rock on that?
Before, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's
Before School.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that's like his two classics, really, right? Kung Fu Panda
Gulliver's
and
Travels and
Gulliver's Travels. Yeah, but
That's
like
the one everybody remembers for.
right, right. But as far as Jack Black starring vehicles that aren't underground stuff like Tenacious D, I would say this and School of Rock easily would be his. They don't make 4 Kung Fu Pandas if it didn't work or have resonance, right? Anyway, Jamie, who wrote this shit?
Who wrote this shit? Sponsored by Netflix. No, not really.
I wish.
Hey, give us a deal. We'll do it.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So there's 3 writers on this: Jonathan Abel, Glenn Berger, and Ethan Reif. I'm not sure if I pronounced 2 of those names right. So there you go. I think the first 2 names, Jonathan and Glenn, seem like a writing duo when I look up their credits. They started they had some sitcom stuff before this, like King of the Hill and things like that. And then Ethan seemed like he had other credits, not connected with those other 2. So my gut says maybe he was on first or he was on second and the other 2 came in. But
he wrote Bulletproof Monk, so he's had some Kung Fu inspiration.
Some related material, yeah.
Right.
The one interesting name, so this was directed by Mark Osborne and John Stevenson. And Mark Osborne is a guy who, in my filmmaking history, like as I wanted to be a filmmaker, he did a short called More. If you look it up, you might know it. It's kind of this weird dystopian stop motion short that kind of got him on the map. Kind of in the early days of the internet, like pre-YouTube days of the internet. If you just Google More, you probably see a picture and you might recognize it. And it was huge to me. Like when I saw this, it was probably made in the 90s maybe or something. And when I saw it, like all I wanted to do was make stop motion and like that. It was like, oh, this is awesome. It's like some weird kind of cartoony stop motion thing. And then he ended up doing this. I think he did some SpongeBob stuff, I think, somewhere. I didn't click on his link. The reason I know is I teach sometimes at MICA, the Maryland Institute College of the Arts. His daughter was going there, and he came to visit one time. He just visited like our classroom.
Jamie, his art department filmography is incredible. We're talking The Muppet Show, Dark Crystal Labyrinth, Little Shop of Horrors, Count Duckula. I was thinking of the Giant Peach. Shrek. I mean, this is like incredible filmography right here.
Yeah, and I'm pretty. I just want to make sure I'm not lying about this guy, but you're
talking about some other person.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like I didn't get him confused with someone. But yeah, More was made in 1998.
Okay.
So and More kind of put him on the map. I think it was the thing that put him on the map. I remember one thing he said about screenwriting, like somebody was asking a question and he was I'm not sure if it was more or he had another short that he made, and he said that he had a class, and the instruction was to take a dream and map it into the hero's journey structure, like some dream they had, and he had a dream and he mapped it into the hero's journey, and that became one of his first shorts, and a pretty popular short. I'm not sure. I don't think it was more though. I think it was another one that I've seen, but I can't remember what it was called. But anyway, so I've been kind of like secretly following Mark Osborne for years for various reasons, but mainly because of that first short that I saw in 1998.
Yeah, he worked on. I can't even believe this stuff that he worked on. Back to the Future character designer on the TV series. That's pretty cool. Yeah, like he's worked on a lot of stuff. What was the box office for this?
Yeah, it's funny. I have let me click on to see international, but 631 million domestically.
Wow.
That's 2008, right?
Yes. So it's kind of insane.
Wow.
I'm trying to find international. I forgot I let it guide me to let me see if I can find it here. Because it's probably I'm just wondering if it's over 1 billion. Yeah, I bet you it is.
What number was that for the year? That had to be high up there. Top 5.
I didn't look that up this time. Let me go check out.
Jamie.
I know, my favorite thing.
No, I'm setting you up to list movies, Jamie.
Oh man, it's because I don't really care about 2008 that much. I'm like, 2008. That was like yesterday to me. So 2008,
16 years ago.
It's funny. Maybe it straddles a year because it's not on this list.
That's okay.
It has The Dark Knight as number 1. Let me see, 2009. Because maybe this came out. I don't know. I thought it came out 2008, but the box office.
Oh man, I put him on the spot. I'm sorry.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it came out June 6, 2008. It did.
So it's the middle of the year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So why isn't it listed? Oh, there it is. It is. It's number 6. I just
number 6. Okay.
Yeah. But now I'm really confused because I gotcha. Here's what's going on. So the thing I read said USD, but that was saying the entire box office in USD. So 600 and some is what it made in its complete earthly run, and the US it only made $215 million.
Okay.
I was going to say that. Yeah, that sounds more.
I mean, that number was massive when you said that. I was like, holy
shit! No wonder there's 4 of these fucking things.
That's why when I went to the domestic box office, The Dark Knight, which was a huge movie, it only made 530.
Only.
Yeah, exactly.
Only $500 million.
Only $500 million. And then that same year, Iron Man came out and made 318. Crystal Skull, which we've done, 317. Hancock made 227.
Hancock.
And then
hell yeah.
And then what's really interesting about this is you have 3 animated movies bunched together: Kung Fu Panda, Madagascar Escape to Africa, and you have Wall-E. And Wall-E was actually ahead of Kung Fu Panda. It came in at 5, and then Kung Fu Panda. So there you go. 215 is the number I was looking for. 600 worldwide. So it was a worldwide phenomenon. That's why I'd say this movie would totally travel. And I think a lot of the animated movies do travel. The one thing I always wondered about animated movies, and I have no answer for this, and I could probably Google it. I always wondered if they just get sound-alikes, like a person that sounds like Jack Black to do the dub, or if they get like celebrities from other countries. Like, would you get the biggest Bollywood celebrity?
I think it's both.
I think it's both.
I think the answer is both.
I think that is true. I think that
there's probably like an Indian Jack Black.
That's what I was gonna say. Someone who does every one of his roles and in that country.
And if from what I understand, if the star's bilingual or something, they offer it to them. I know that's happened before.
Okay.
If Jack Black could speak, Chinese,
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, he would do it in other countries. Also, Jamie, just because I stumbled upon it while I was looking while you were talking.
Yep.
We don't normally talk about this, but it's another list.
Mm-hmm.
For the franchise, Kung Fu Panda made 631, like you said, worldwide.
Okay. Yep.
Kung Fu Panda 2 made 664
wow.
million. 3 made 521 million worldwide, and so far 4 has made 81 million worldwide, but it just opened, so that doesn't count as a full. But that's, I mean, the whole franchise right now has made 1.9 billion worldwide. So
Wow.
yeah, that's that. Yeah, there you go. It's like a lot.
Here's the weird thing. Like, I was recently at Universal Studios, and they have this whole section devoted to like Beetle Bailey and like Mary Worth and Popeye, and they really don't use their DreamWorks. Like, they don't have a Kung Fu Panda section or something.
With numbers like
Wow.
that,
They-
they don't. Do they have a Kung Fu Panda walking around at least?
They probably do. They probably do.
Okay.
We do have a lot of Minion stuff. There is a lot of Minion stuff, but I'm just like, why are we doing Beetle Bailey and Popeye
Not Kung
and-
Fu Panda.
and not Kung
yeah.
Fu Panda? It's so weird. It's like the weirdest thing that there's this whole section devoted to all these, and it's like you could make this Kung Fu Panda land or something. I don't know.
Have like one of those like Honey I Shrunk the Kids playgrounds like they had in that,
Something.
and you go Kung Fu Panda, like kids doing kung fu against a bunch of foam stuff, and I don't know.
Yeah.
That's off the top of my head. Come on.
Instead, it's like it's like the Phantom and stuff like that. It's Prince Valiant. I mean, I'm like, who is this for? This is like
That's really weird.
This was old when
That
I
is-
was a kid. Like when I
that
was
is
a kid,
weird.
this was my dad's comic strips.
You want to
I'm
go in the Heathcliff coaster, kids?
What-
Like,
are they-
what?
Are they trying to bring in the World War II generation to Universal Studios? I don't get it. It just
Maybe.
doesn't- Yeah, it's very head scratching.
That's pretty funny.
90 plus, you'll love
but-
Universal Studios.
I mean, this is almost a $2 billion franchise. That's insane that it's not represented there.
Yeah.
Like, that's nuts.
I did see a statue somewhere. Like they had a statue of them or something, but that's about all I saw the whole time I was there. And I was like, and the whole time I was just perplexed. Like they have so many properties they could just be using, and instead they have some very odd choices there.
That's why Jamie was so excited to do this, is because he was walking around the theme park saying, "Where's Kung Fu?
Where's Kung Fu Panda? I was just like,
As the am I going insane?" Like,
yeah, it's, I thought maybe it didn't make as much money as I thought it did.
no, it was very successful.
Jamie's got his phone. I got the box office right here.
Yeah.
Here's my list.
I know Universal at one time did a lot with Shrek, but not as much anymore. Like they've swapped it out for Minions stuff. So I don't know. Maybe they just are like one DreamWorks animation thing at a time. You know what I mean? Like we're going all in with Minions. But
I mean, all three of those Shrek, Minions, and this. I mean, that's three huge. I mean, why wouldn't that be your theme park? I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, better than
Yeah.
Prince Valiant.
That's a weird choice.
Yeah.
Did you want to say anything more about animation writing? I know you kind of touched on it a little bit.
Yeah. So I did want to go into a little bit because we don't talk about animation writing a ton. And I just
The
wanted
last movie we did was Mitchell's vs. the Machines, I believe.
Okay.
That was
Yeah,
last
we've only done
animated.
4 total.
Yeah.
so
Including this.
You're right. Yeah.
it's funny. So the first thing I'll say is the general rule of thumb is don't write for animation. And that's generally the rule of thumb. So when I was coming up, especially like the Terry Rossios, the Ted Elliots, who wrote Shrek and Aladdin and many other things, they would say, no, don't write for animation. No way. Because all that stuff is developed inside, in-house. They do everything in-house. I think I can't remember if it was Disney or Pixar. They used to have like a gong show, and they would let employees kind of pitch and stuff like that. But everything was in-house developed. They did not get things from the outside. Now that said, Shrek was like a children's book or something, but I still think it was kind of something promoted from inside. They brought it in and bought the rights and all that stuff. So the general rule of thumb is nobody ever buys these movies on spec, like ever. And I'm sure there's some case that we could find that's not true, but for the most part, nobody ever buys these things on spec. I don't really know why. I think it's just because of the history of it, because animators are writers too. And kind of mixed with that, there is a weird thing where the WGA doesn't necessarily, the Writers Guild of America, represent animation. So a lot of these movies are non-WGA movies, because going back to the history of when the WGA was formed, animators were like, we don't want to join the WGA. We write the movies. We write these. We're not writers. We have our own guilds and stuff like that. So the WGA kind of made a split thing where, okay, well, animators are covered. We'll only cover live action. So that leads to a lot of weird things. Like if you ever see Pixar credits, you might see 50 people wrote the movie, or they might have weird credits or something, where that's why you don't see that in the WGA movies or the live action movies, because they have rules against that. They like limit it to how many writers they want in the credits, but the other movies do not. What does that mean for a guy like me who wants to write for animation? It means that when I get hired, which I have on a couple occasions by an animation company, it's the wild, wild west. There's no minimums. They can pay me whatever they want, basically. Oftentimes there's no residuals, which you've probably heard, like the Beauty and the Beast writer only made such and such amount of money, even though they made a remake of it and all this stuff. It's because a lot of times the writers of these movies make no residuals. They don't have very great deals. I mean, the Beauty and the Beast people probably got paid $200,000 or something. They just didn't make the millions they would have made if they had a regular deal, with a live action movie. So putting that aside, for that reason, they always say, never write an animated spec. I think, I think anybody would tell you, like a lot of screenwriters would say, never write a spec, never write, don't go into screenwriting. So every time
give
you
up right
give
now.
up completely.
every time, if we're really talking like the odds or something like that, that probably is good advice. Don't write a screenplay, never write.
Ooh, that is the coldest, hardest thing you've ever said on the show.
The show off.
Don't listen to Writers Blockbusters. Unsubscribe now. But if you strictly went by like some kind of weird odd system, that's kind of the advice you'd give. So that's why I don't necessarily, if you want to write an animated thing, it's, who knows? I mean, I bet there is animation. There's I'm working on an animated thing right now. And, these budgets might be hundreds of millions of dollars, but there are companies now that can make them for tens of millions of dollars, so maybe they would look for something on spec. Maybe they aren't the machine that Universal and stuff like that are. And the other thing is, I'll say I have one experience. The one company that's been very open to pitching, in my experience, I had a connection with, was DreamWorks. I've actually pitched to DreamWorks a few times. I have never sold anything, but they were very open, and they said things come from the outside all the time via pitches. They're very rarely spec scripts, but if you can get in to pitch them and you have an idea and it's something they're looking for, they'll like make a deal to write a treatment or a script or something like that. Despite the thing I just said, where never write an animated, if Universal's open to outside material, and they occasionally, or DreamWorks, it's not Universal, DreamWorks, then, who knows? Maybe there is a possibility. I would never say never. And I'd say the world has changed a little bit from the time I was coming up in screenwriting until now. So anyway, the one thing I did want to talk about, though, in these pitches, one of the main questions you get is, why does this have to be animation? And at least the times I was pitching, I remember they didn't really like talking animal movies. They said, yeah, we kind of got enough of talking animals. We want something else.
How ironic.
And then you get to a point, like, if it's not talking animals and it's people, and they ask you the question, why does it have to be animation? Like, why does Paranorman have to be animation? It doesn't. In my opinion, this is my kind of rant on this topic. I think there's almost anything you can do in animation now. You could even do talking animals in live action. I don't really think it's a great question in some ways. Sometimes I think it's more about tone and things like that. Like there are some ideas I have that if you made a $200 million movie that had this kind of goofy tone or something, like if you made imagine if you made Kung Fu Panda live action, right? With real,
Disney's been doing that.
They have.
Yeah.
There would be something about Kung Fu Panda that would like if you told me that, if you pitched that originally to me as that, I think it'd be a little nutty, because of tone and stuff. It'd be like, but now you could probably do it now that it's this big franchise. You probably could do it. It would be like, there would be an audience for it. But I always had problems with that question because I think you can do anything in animate. Like I don't think, or anything in live action now that you could do in animation.
When it comes around, they're remaking. It's interesting. They're remaking How to Train Your Dragon with the same writer and same director making the live action version of his own movie.
Yeah.
I think we should revisit that question when that comes around, because that parallel is so odd. And to see if that answers that question. Why should you or shouldn't you? Because you'd have the same movie made by the same person.
It might even be a question where we compare the two. We do
we could watch both and
the
compare both.
execution.
That'd be cool. But that's a perfect for use of that question.
I usually feel like when they ask that question of me, they usually use that just to say, they'll go, we really like it, but we're not convinced that it has to be animation. It's like, okay, whatever. They don't like it. I think Hollywood has all kinds of little excuses like that they can avoid conflict by saying something else, and sometimes I think that particular question in the animation space is more about that. Like if they love the idea and it could be live action or animation, they love the idea and they'd probably just do it animation. They'd be like,
also, Jamie, wouldn't it be about what the target audience is? I would think that
it's a big part.
If it's for kids, you would say animation more often, right?
Like if I'm pitching, I remember I pitched like kind of horror concepts at them, but they were fun. They were like Paranorman, right? And could you imagine doing a kids Paranorman for $200 million live action? It just nobody would be like,
be nuts. Yeah,
I'd be like, there's nobody that would make it. So when they ask, like, well, why does this have to be animation?
Then again,
because they would never make it. And the other.
Then again, it's kind of like Wednesday, right, or something like that.
A little bit.
Like Netflix paid for Wednesday, and that's
on the flip side of this. I've had a lot of my live action things. People come back to me and say, "This is animation, right?" And I'm like, is it? I don't know. And I've had that happen to me on a couple occasions where somebody suggested, they're like, I really like this. I think you should just pitch it as animation. And I'm like, okay, I don't care, as long as they make it or send me a check. So I've had that happen too, so it kind of cuts both ways.
I guess just to expand the conversation, why should Kung Fu Panda be animated? Why was that the answer to this one? I mean, I think it's obvious.
This one's easy because
I think
of
it's
the
obvious.
animals and the intended audience.
I think it's also the action they were going for and the fluid motion
and
of a lot of stuff and
like
the tone.
You said.
Yeah, it would look completely and feel completely different,
right?
with live action. You just can't have movement like that with live action.
At least in 2008.
Yeah.
Definitely in 2008, it would look really weird. Yeah. Now maybe, who knows? There's no limits anymore. So
I do think there's just a broader audience appeal. Like if I think of the same movie done in sort of a live action sort of way where the animals looked real, which has been done. I mean, there are many movies that do that. It just, I don't know. To me, it's kind of a turnoff or something. I don't know.
Watch the Lion King remake. It's weird.
It's weird.
It's weird.
And it's like the Lion King to me works better because we've seen the Lion King. So now we're like, kind of like, oh, it's the Lion King, but real. And it's kind of got a twist.
It's got that. Yeah.
It's like something old, but different kind of approach to it. But yeah, anyway, that's all I wanted to say about animation writing. I personally don't think the only difference I think of when I write for animation is I go to more extremes. I mean, it's obviously I'm picturing the movie, and animation kind of comes from this world of gag writing, and it comes from a world where animators write because they're doing gags. Like I think in this movie, like the chopstick scene, like that's something. I love that scene. I think that's a great scene. But that feels like something that comes out of the world of animation. It feels like an animator or somebody thinking about that would have really thought that up. And that's kind of the way I think when I write for animation. I try to, go for things like that are very visual, that are a little extreme and maybe push the boundaries of the real universe. in some ways.
Like the bridge fight too, right?
The
Like
bridge
that.
fight.
There's
Yeah.
nothing that works there, like in reality.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
right. But
Or
it's
the
great.
prison escape too.
The prison escape, yeah, the physics and everything, but it works because it's animated,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the only danger, like if you wrote an animated thing and you weren't thinking of those terms, I think it would come out like, oh, this is just kind of talky. And, it'd be like, why are we doing this? Like, that's where the question really says, like, why are we doing this animation? You've taken no advantage of the medium whatsoever. It's just a kind of talk fest that feels like a live action thing that you're saying is animated. And that said, it could still be animated. It's just maybe
I mean, I was
you're
going to
not.
say TV
Yeah.
has done talk fest animation forever.
Absolutely.
Archer.
Yep.
I mean, Archer was like 100% talking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's my thing. Like even that exists. It's just maybe you're not taking advantage of it, for a $200 million movie. Like,
yeah. Okay, cool. Do you want to talk about the theme list? Do you want to go into that?
Sure. So I found this thing on, I can't remember where I found it actually. It's because I just kind of Googled. Well, so I'll explain what it is. It says Vox. Is Vox
It's
the
a
thing?
it's a Vox analysis. Yeah.
Yeah, a Vox analysis. So Vox analyzed Pixar movies. They didn't unfortunately analyze any DreamWorks movies.
Yeah.
So, but I thought it might be useful to see if there's any of these here. So they call them themes. I don't know that they're themes or tropes or story patterns or whatever we want to do.
Story patterns is a good way to put it. It's like another version of your Save the Cat.
Save the Cat genres, kind of. So what they did was they made a list of, they kind of made a grid, and on the left side, and you can kind of look this up. On the left side, they have the tropes or whatever, the patterns, and then on the right side, they have the Pixar movies. So I wanted to go through and just maybe briefly talk about these, but see if any of these exist in Kung Fu Panda as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here are all the Pixar movies themes in a grid. So the first one is a mismatched pair of partners. And it lists every single Pixar movie. I mean, this isn't completely up to date, except Bugs Life, The Incredibles, and Cars as having a mismatched pair of partners. So over 10, probably close to a dozen to have a mismatched pair of partners. Do you think Kung Fu Panda has?
I would say yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a big part of the story.
Him mixed with the
him
Furious
and the
Five.
yeah.
Him and Shifu, even him and everyone involved.
Yeah.
With Kung Fu it was a mismatch pair.
Okay, and then the next one almost goes hand in hand, but with serious philosophical differences.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'd say about half of the ones in Pixar, at least, or maybe a little more than half, have that as well. Go on a wacky journey. This one's pretty contained, and
yeah,
in fact,
it's all happening in his town, sort of, right?
Like, yeah. The only Pixar ones, so Toy Story goes on a wacky journey. Bugs Life, Monsters Inc. I don't know. Does Monsters Inc. go on a wacky journey? Finding Nemo,
going to another world.
Yeah, they go to another world.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So WALL-E, all these ones have it. The only ones that don't have it are Cars, Ratatouille, which is definitely stays in one place. What do we have? Brave, Monsters University are the only ones. So Monsters University, it's almost in the title. Ratatouille, it's 100% in the concept. Okay, so a loved one is lost.
Not a thing here.
No, not a thing here.
Yeah, his dad. He's not like close with Oogway, and his dad is there. He didn't lose anybody, right?
Right. Yeah, I don't think so. A child comes of age. I think that one. I think
it's definitely a coming of age.
Yeah. And the child is loosely defined.
Right.
He's a child like figure, if anything.
Yeah. Most of the Pixar ones have this. Only a couple do not. Like Cars, Ratatouille. There's WALL-E. I almost think WALL-E comes of age in a weird sort of way. Okay. So their parent figure realizes nothing lasts forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so.
His supposed dad.
In a kind of loose sort of way. I think that's true. There's a super sad piece of music. I'm not sure. Is there?
I mean, yeah, probably. That's a weird thing. That's a weird theme there.
It is. That's a weird one.
There's some sad
you know what? Oogway?
I think Oogway disappearing
Oogway's disappearance.
It's more majestic than it is sad.
Yeah.
I'd count it. It's fine.
And this is an easy one that most of them have, and a wacky ensemble of supporting players. Yes.
Yes.
And most of them have that.
I don't know. Kung Fu Panda a little less so. The Furious 5 isn't wacky as much, right? They have jokes though.
Yeah.
They do have jokes.
I mean,
Seth Rogen as
praying
Mantis.
mantis,
Okay,
all that
okay,
stuff.
okay.
with
I
that
think they're pretty
character is
wacky.
Yeah, it's wacky. It's fine.
We explore the hidden world of everyday objects. Not so much in
Dumplings, chopsticks.
dumplings and chopsticks. Yeah.
Yeah, they make some ordinary into
I
extraordinary.
mean, the actual object of the whole movie is just a mirror, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Someone finds their calling. Yes.
Yes. Oh my God. It's like,
And by the way,
100%.
almost every Pixar movie has that except Finding Nemo, Up, and Cars 2. So that shows you how prevalent that one is.
Yeah.
An ad hoc community is formed by Movie's End.
I think so.
I think
with the
so.
5 and yeah.
Yep.
he's part of the temple now.
He
right?
becomes
he
has a
Dragon
new
Warrior.
family essentially.
Yeah.
And again, almost every what's that?
The last theme.
The last
Oh
one.
yeah. But with the ad hoc community, everyone except Cars 2 and Brave had that. And then the last one is Cars Can Talk. And that's
I mean, that's them making a joke, right?
that's
not
them giving a little punchline. Yeah. They
Yeah,
want-
okay.
No,
they
but
wanted
this
to be
is a
funny.
great list of animation genre and
I-
high level
I-
like
the-
patterns. right
what I
there.
think is, and the mismatched pair of partners is one thing. One thing I will say from my pitch days pitching at DreamWorks is they were really character based. They really wanted to know like who the character was, who could star as it, what's funny about them, what's their journey, what's the problem they're facing. So a lot of these are focused on that. Like, and sometimes it was they wanted partners. They wanted a two-hander. That was a very common thing they were looking for. They were like, what's a two-hander for this? And I think the ones this movie hits are the ones that most of these movies hit. If it's mismatched partners, they have philosophical difference. They come of age. A child comes of age. Someone finds their calling. It's all that kind of wacky ensemble of supporting players. These are very common things you probably want to have in your animated spec script that you should never write.
you should never write. Before we move on,
The next one I'm consulting on is animated. I will
really That's pretty funny.
hesitate to send him this episode.
That's right.
No,
Why am I paying you?
The one thing we kind of didn't touch on earlier with this movie is there's so much of this movie that feels like it's written for a performer.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Where a lot of animated movies, I don't know if I feel that way, but this is like, it's like, written for one human being.
Right.
And I wonder how that process is. Not that we know that answer, but
honestly,
it's obviously been, it's Jack Black, right?
That's one of the big things when you go ahead and pitch one of these. And for me, it was always Danny McBride is starring as, it was always Danny McBride. No matter what movie I pitched, it was always Danny McBride.
Danny McBride playing like his Poe's brother would be incredible.
It was
Yes.
incredible.
Yeah, for me, it was always
Long lost brother. That's great.
Danny McBride and Aubrey Plaza were starred in every one of my Pixar movies. They were the two.
But like the opening of this movie, it's like Jack Black wrote it. He didn't, but the whole dream sequence. It's like, well, let's write this as though the character of Jack Black is
for Jack Black's strengths, basically. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
It's just I just want to know, which we can't answer here, if it was the chicken and the egg. Did Jack Black come first, or did what adapted to what?
Well, you know what, Jamie, you've talked about, this isn't on the talking points, but that kind of that's circling around a technique you've talked about, where finding the character's voice.
I use Jack Black a lot because he's got such a strong voice. Like, I like to use characters when I write for that way. So I cast my characters when I write, and I kind of picture them, and I basically write for them. And Jack Black is one of the ones that come back a lot because he has such a distinct voice. Danny McBride has a very distinct voice, which is why I use him as an example. I use people that have very strong types that I can easily cast, and then
John Benjamin or something. John Benjamin.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that. Yeah.
I was just talking to a writer yesterday about this because she said every now and then I'll do what Jimmy does and have a client or something. And this particular person sent me a pitch document, and they said I was worried about sending, the pitch document with pictures and suggestions because I heard you're not supposed to do that. And I said, no, I always do that. And the story I told them, I'll give it to you super quick because I always like to tell this story. It's kind of funny. And I probably told this on the podcast before. You may have heard this, but I had a script one time that was, it was kind of like groomed for, who was it? It was George Lopez and Samuel L. Jackson. They were going to team up in this movie. It was a comedy. It was kind of a pseudo kids movie kind of thing. And well, I had an in like to get it to those people. So I wrote it for those two, right? And George Lopez got it and he signed on, which we'll put a pin in for 1 second. And then Samuel L. Jackson, they never sent to him. I think the reason was Samuel L. Jackson is kind of notoriously like expensive to get. Like he doesn't give discounts or something. So they
was he Nick Fury by this point?
I don't think so. Maybe it was right around the time, or it was probably right around 2008 if I had it in my head right. Maybe 2009. So probably just starting that. So they didn't send it to him. So instead they sent it to Tim Allen. Okay. And Tim Allen signed on right away. Okay. But here's the funny part. So I wrote it for Samuel L. Jackson and George Lopez. So here's the funny thing. George Lopez had a shitload of notes. Tim Allen said, I'm good. So
what?
Tim Allen was like, Samuel L. Jackson, I'm good. I'm playing that. George Lopez had a lot of notes. We never sold it, so it didn't matter. I mean, now
wow.
The reverse of that. So I'm just trying to say, like, as hard as I went, Samuel L. Jackson in the script, and it was a PG-13 Samuel Jackson or PG Samuel Jackson. Tim Allen was cool. He didn't like say, "Oh, this is obviously Samuel L. Jackson." He just kind of read it as a character, right? Now George Lopez, for whatever reason, when he read it as himself, and he was like, "This is me, but that's not how I want to be." And he kind of had notes on himself.
Gotcha.
So I don't know. I think I've always found that instructive in that Tim Allen didn't care that I wrote it for Samuel L. Jackson or to whoever Tim Allen's people are or whatever, whoever read it. I didn't meet Tim Allen, obviously. But they didn't seem to care. Or on the flip side, this is probably the reality. They were probably like, go get some money and then we'll give you the notes. You know what I mean? Like, go get this greenlit and then come back to us and then we'll give you all the notes. And it never got greenlit, so I never saw the notes. But I did have to do a lot of George Lopez notes.
Hey, Shrek was written for Chris Farley, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Cool. You want to talk about arcs? 2 types of arcs?
Yeah, just really simple, because we talk a lot about arcs and themes and stuff like that. And I just wanted to go back to that simple point that we used to make in the beginning that I once heard Jeff Howard say, and it was there's 2 types of arcs, and he attributed it to somebody else who I can't remember who that is. Jeff Howard he actually has a YouTube channel now. He does Jeff Howard Sessions. So go check that out. He's like the writer of a lot of Mike Flanagan stuff and a lot of other stuff as well. Cool. So Jeff Howard, he said that there are 2 types of arcs. One is to get more confident, and one is to care more. And then I always added, like, because I saw it in the early days of this podcast when we saw things, I always noticed that I was kind of always testing this. I was like, is this true? And I think it is true. I think in a large, while you can get much more nuanced as to what does it mean to become more confident, like how they become, why they're not confident, all that stuff, what kind of confidence they need or what kind of empathy they need, all that stuff. I think it does boil down to those 2 arcs. And then we always added the one, or at least I did, to be more of a team player, because it doesn't seem to 100% fit with the other 2. And I think this movie it's very simplistic in a good way, very obvious in its arcs. It's a character who kind of has a dream and isn't confident in talking about it because he doesn't fit the thing. And he kind of, over the course of it, gets more confidence, fulfills his destiny, gets his dream. It's super simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other people kind of learn to work as a team with him.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think there is teamwork in this one as well. As there seem to be in a lot of these
You could
universal.
argue that Shifu has the same journey in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
His own version of this.
His own
yeah.
version of what Poe's going through. Yeah.
And that's almost, that's a lot of times in a weird sort of way true of villains. Is villains tend to be on the same arc spectrum, but they kind of have a dark way of approaching it. It's almost like as if they have no ethics. Like if he was approaching his dreams and confidence and all that stuff, but had zero ethics and was willing to take no prisoner, that's usually what the villain's like. That's the kind of we're the same, you and I kind of tactic.
The circus mirror.
Yeah.
It sort of tracks for this, right?
It's a
It
bit,
does.
yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Right.
It does.
And with comedy, it makes it funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And did Last Jedi have tracks too?
Yeah, right. Which is just this movie, right?
Right.
Let's talk about the midpoint or the false defeat.
Yeah.
Whose is this?
This is mine.
Okay.
So I like this midpoint in that so midpoints often are false victories or false defeats. Like that's I've talked, I think in the last podcast, I talked about a bunch of midpoint types. Like you show up on the bad guy's radar, or there's the intimate moment or the sex at 60 moment that we always talk about, that laugh at the intimate moment, the kiss or something like that happens at the midpoint. There's all kinds of specific types of midpoint, but at the highest level, you're really chasing a false victory or a false defeat. And a lot of movies have false victories. And it's always, for me at least, like when people say, well, give me an example of a false defeat, it's always harder for me to remember them for some reason. Like but I feel like this one has a false defeat. Because in this one, the way it's kind of structured is, and this is what I'm pegging as the midpoint. The bad guy has escaped and he's on his way, right? And that seems like a false defeat. That seems like the worst. It almost is an all is lost to an extent, right? The bad guy's on the way. But it's a false defeat because that's the thing that spurs Kung Fu Panda's mentor to finally kind of go all in on the training and do it in a specific way based on, when the turtle dies and fades away and says, make the promise that he'll believe in Po. So it's kind of like this double-edged thing where it feels like a defeat, but then a positive thing comes out of the defeat. And that's what I just wanted to mention it because it's hard to find false defeats sometimes. It's easy to find false victories, but hard to find false defeats.
My favorite simple false defeat is Star Wars. That's no moon. That's a space station. And then they see the Death Star and they start getting sucked into the Death Star. And it's a great false defeat, right? Like, shit, the Empire has won. We can't defeat this giant space station that's as big as the moon. So,
but in the end, that's kind of what led to.
Yeah,
that's what you mean,
it
right?
all. Yeah,
it pushed it all forward, right?
When people ask me, Jamie, for a false defeat, that's the one I go to.
Yeah,
that's no moon. That's a space station.
Yep.
And then now you got Kung Fu Panda. I love that there's so much Star Wars on a Kung Fu Panda episode. Never expected that. Did you? Okay, good news, bad news, right?
Yeah, this is yours.
So yeah, the good news, bad news technique. We've talked about this a few times. I think most notably was Jamie's favorite movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and we also did on Solo, a Star Wars story, and it's sort of the technique. We kind of like live in that like Lucasfilm Spielbergian technique of action scenes and how to write them and how you go from it's good news and it's bad news and it's talking from the perspective of a certain character. So I tracked the good news and bad news in one scene in this movie. And before I get into it, I wanted to say, I think what's so incredible about this movie is that like me and Jimmy kind of had to talk through which scene I was supposed to break down. There's three that we talked about. One was the Tai Lung escape. One was the broken bridge fight. And then the other was the dumpling training montage scene. And I think the thing that notable about all three is that they're all dynamic and story important. They're all different, dynamic, and they're very important to what it's telling us about the story. And that's just something I realized about the movie, having this discussion with you guys.
They're all such memorable scenes,
and
and
they're
that's why
important.
they are.
Yeah,
Yes,
they're giving us information we need and about the characters and the oncoming story and everything. So I think that's one of the reasons this movie is great too, is the action means something in it,
yes.
which is really awesome. And so I decided out of all three of the action scenes to track the dumpling fight between Poe and Master Shifu, which is the one you would not assume to track.
Yeah.
But I think Jimmy, you're the one that suggested this, and I
It
think
felt like it while I was watching.
no,
Yeah.
out of the three, I think it might be the best good news, bad news out of the three, because I think Tai Lung Escape is more one note on purpose to show his ferocity
His
and then
dominance.
yeah. So this seemed like it fit more into the good news, bad news, Indiana Jones style fight. So I'll just read this off quick, and you guys, if you want to chime in, you tell me. And yeah, so we're gonna start with good news. There's a bowl of dumplings Master Shifu is openly offering to Poe. Bad news, as Poe raises the dumpling-filled chopsticks to his mouth, a super fast Master Shifu snatches it away, right? Good news. Master Shifu offers Poe another dumpling. Bad news. Master Shifu quickly kicks the new dumpling into the air and swallows it. Good news. Poe visibly understands it's a test of his training and gets renewed energy and slams the table, shooting the ball and dumplings into the air. Bad news. Master Shifu flies up and grabs all but one dumpling, popping them into his mouth before they land. Good news. Poe sees the last remaining dumpling hovering before it falls, leaping for it with his mouth. Bad news. Master Shifu snatches the dumpling out of the air with his chopsticks. Good news. Poe snatches the dumpling out of Master Shifu's chopsticks with his chopsticks. Bad news. The dumpling falls into the bowl, causing a table hockey-like battle of chopsticks with Master Shifu, who is way more skilled. And he turns all three bowls over and turns it into a dumpling version of the shell game, if everyone knows what the shell game is. Like, pick where the ball is, Good news. Poe picks the right bowl with the dumpling under it. Bad news. Master Shifu is way more skilled at chopstick kung fu and continues to hold off Poe from grabbing it. Good news. Poe hits the bowl off the table and high kicks the dumpling in the air so it's about to fall directly into his mouth. Bad news. Master Shifu chucks his chopsticks like a spear through the dumpling midair, darting it into a tree above and using Poe as a stepladder to climb and leap up to the dumpling. Good news. Poe catches Master Shifu by the foot with his chopsticks and flings him to the ground. Bad news. Master Shifu flings Poe around with several kung fu tactics, slamming him on his back. Good news. The dumpling slides off the chopstick and falls towards them. Poe pushes Shifu out of the way and is about to catch the dumpling in his mouth. Bad news. Master Shifu closes Poe's mouth with his chopsticks and punts the dumpling away. Good news. Poe is now closer to the direction of the dumpling and starts sprinting. Master Shifu is very pleased at his training and then drops his own chopsticks and starts running. Bad news. Master Shifu picks up his staff and once again knocks the dumpling from Poe's hands. Good news. Poe, displaying his training, successfully counters and blocks all of Master Shifu's staff attacks while keeping track of where the dumpling is. He steps on the staff and leaps up, bouncing the dumpling off his belly with glee, flips and lands and gloriously catches it in his chopsticks. Master Shifu proudly lets him eat.
Awesome.
So
Good job,
I think
Bob.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That's a
that's
really
cool.
great back and forth.
And
and it's a great scene, I think. Yeah.
Honestly, I think that speaks to what I was kind of talking about with animation writing is that's the kind of thing that animators, when they write, do really, really good. They
Yeah.
come from that gag school of, and I think good news, bad news is really where they kind of excel.
It's all kind of gags, visual.
It's all gags. It's a bunch of visual gags just chained together rapidly, fast.
But we have shown so we did it in Solo, we did it in Raiders of the Lost Ark, we did it in Dungeons and Dragons,
Willow.
we did it in Willow, we've done it and we've also shown how it can be used in horror. Bad news, worst news, worst news. It just what I love about this is you have a blank page. It's the biggest challenge. You're sitting there. You know how the scene starts. You know how the scene ends. How are you going to make it compelling within those lines, right? And a really easy way to do this is just to write good news, bad news on a piece of paper and fill it in. And I read scripts all the time that it's an action scene. The guy comes in or the lady comes in, they kick ass, mow everybody down, and they get out. And it's really not exciting because there's none of this rise and fall. There's none of this back and forth. And this just makes for a really easy technique for writing a compelling scene. I love it. It's like one of my favorite things that's come out of this show, really.
Is the good news bad news?
Yeah.
I can't tell you, like, I read a script recently from a good writer. I mean, otherwise good writer, but maybe just doesn't have a lot of experience with the action stuff. And it was kind of like a thing where the example I'll give is they're trying to start their car, right? And they're like, and the monster's coming. And they run around to the front of the car, they open it up and they go, oh, the battery's disconnected. They connect the battery, they get back in the car and they drive away. And then the monster comes. And that's it. And it was like
one bad news.
Yeah, it was like one bad news. No, you gotta give me, okay, they put it together. They get electric shock or something. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
They're dead in the ground.
The battery, but the car still won't start.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
And then you gotta go,
like,
yeah, right.
Well, they start it then and the whole engine blows up.
Or the whole engine blows up.
Whatever.
Right.
I mean, and it's really, you got to think like that. And it has to be several of these. I always say at least give me three. At least give me three.
Mm-hmm.
If you do good news, bad news, good news, bad news, good news, bad news, we're done. I'm good with that. Like, this level is kind of for the animation writing and stuff sometimes, or for the big sequences. But at least give me three. If nothing else, give me three. And I can't
like
tell
that.
You. Yeah, I can't tell you how many scripts just give me one.
Yep. Same.
And three is like the formula for a joke, right? Set up, establish, punchline, right? So
yeah, that's true.
You can fit it in there too. And also I wanted to say, like, I didn't track it, but the bridge scene would probably be a good track too. Because you got everything with the Furious Five fighting Tai Lung, and it is a back and forth between
and forth between each.
Like, oh no, the bridge is broke. Oh no, Seth Rogen catches the bridge, but he's just a praying mantis. Right? Like, it has a lot of that back and forth. So, that's everything for good news, bad news.
I thought of mine. They reconnect the battery and then they go back and they lock the keys in the car. That's now
they got to smash.
Then they smash the window.
Then they smash the window. Now they're bleeding. And
their hand can't grab the wheel or something. Right.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Dark Knight of the Soul.
Yeah, the Dark Knight of the Soul is something we don't talk too often about. So it was another one I saw here when I was watching. I just did a Save the Cat webinar, and I was thinking about all these things. And then as I watched him, I was like, oh, that hits this thing I was talking about. So I wanted to mention something. So in the All Is Lost, I'm going to peg the All Is Lost in this movie. So Save the Cat, beat sheet, 15 beats. The All Is Lost usually comes at the 75% mark. It's the really bad thing that seems like all hope is lost. All Is Lost. I'm pegging it as the scroll is blank, right? It holds no secret. This whole thing has been a waste of time. The bad guy's coming in, and that's the All Is Lost. So the next scene after that is usually what's the Dark Knight of the Soul. And the Dark Knight of the Soul is usually kind of a wallowing beat. It's reaction to the All Is Lost. And a lot of people get, no pun intended, they get lost in it a little bit. They don't know what to do. And, some people don't even get the wallowing part right. They just kind of move on into break into three and get on with it. So a lot of times in Dark Knight of the Soul, it's rainy, they're sad, they're walking slow or something. But one trick that Blake Snyder mentions in his book, when I was going back through his book for another project I was looking at, his original Save the Cat, is he has a thing called going back to the ordinary. And this has become a new key to unlocking this Dark Knight of the Soul. So going back to the ordinary world, because it allows you to reflect on the flaws in the Shard of Glass and kind of to remember what it was like to have that stasis equals death in the setup. So in this case, Poe returns to his dad. He returns to the noodle shop for the first time, essentially, in all this time. And he has this reflection. He has this moment of reflection. So anyway, I think it's a really good piece of advice. The other piece of advice I'll kind of give is if you can add a goal to the hero in even if it's small and has nothing to do with the overall plot, like evacuate the town or something like that.
Right.
At least it gives them something to do, and it gives your Dark Knight of the Soul beats some trajectory. So anyway, it was two things I've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, and I saw it here, and I was like, "This is a good example." So there you
Can
go.
you give them
Love
the
that.
specific example that you saw? I don't think you described it, just for people listening.
So yeah, the two things, the two things are the Return to the Ordinary was literally him going back to the noodle shop. That's the Return to the Ordinary.
Right. Okay.
And then the goal was like them evacuating the town or something
Okay.
like that. Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Gotcha. Poe's growing pains.
Okay, so this is mine. Well, Bob's going to assist on this. A lot of what Jamie just talked about, and then including the dumpling battle, is also going to come back into this. So I thought this would be a good time to do a book report on how to earn your character's arc and how this movie does so. So a lot of times we've talked in the past about this notion of old way, new way. And I say a lot that a lot of the scripts I read when they give us a character arc, I call it beat sheet execution. Like they're like, the character needs to arc here, and then they arc, but they haven't earned it in between. Jamie talks a lot about
Mhm.
you build the skeleton, and then you have to earn it. Well, how do you earn it? And what does that mean? Well, how you earn it is by showing the audience a series of growing pains. These are progressions toward the new way, and then regressions back to the old way. Like Jamie says, the ordinary world, like really the ordinary Poe, right? And so looking back, we've only done this once, and that was George McFly with Back to the Future. And George McFly had, and he's not even the main character, and George McFly has 7 growing pains, 7 of these beats before he has his big moment of change. And I almost did it for Star Wars, but we ran out of time. So for instance, Luke Skywalker in comparison, another Star Wars reference for this. Luke Skywalker has 6 specific beats like this of believing in himself, gaining confidence in order to use the Force, where it's 6 focused beats on that before he finally uses the Force in order to destroy the Death Star. So this one, when I broke it down, I was assuming it would be like 6 or 7, but I was pretty shocked to find that almost every single Poe scene, if not every single Poe scene, is primarily focused on whether he's moving forward or whether he's growing or regressing, specific to gaining confidence. And so, yeah, a lot. So I'm going to go down this entire growth chart and kind of show you how we get these growth spurts, then we get these regressions, then we get these growth spurts, and then we get these regressions. And I have cut and pasted most of this from the script. So what I'll be reading is mostly exactly how it's described in the script. So, and Bob, you're gonna read Poe, right?
I'm gonna read Poe, and you read everything else. Right.
All right. So this is gonna be 7 pages of us reading.
We'll get through it. But it's not 7 fully single.
No.
pages.
And Jamie, yeah. I'd love if you can kind of chime in if you feel it's appropriate for speaking to the arc and what you've talked about leading up to this.
Sounds good.
We've never done this before, so this is we're learning on the fly. So this is how they earn Poe's arc. So the first beat is old way Poe. He doesn't believe in himself, right? He has no confidence. Poe lies about his kung fu dream to his dad. He tells dad what he wants to hear. The dream was about noodles. You're almost ready to be entrusted with the secret ingredient of my secret ingredient soup. And then you will fulfill your destiny and take over the restaurant, just as I took over from my father, who took it over from his father, who won it from a friend in a game of mahjong.
Didn't you ever want to do something else?
Everyone has their place in the world, and yours,
I know, is here.
So there you go. We get the scene that establishes he has a dream, but he doesn't have the confidence to express it, and he's stuck in that old way. Second scene, very closely in proximity to this scene, but it's important, is another old way Poe. Poe's excited to go to the ceremony where one of the 5 will be chosen as the Dragon Warrior. But you're forgetting your noodle cart. The whole valley will be there, and you'll sell noodles to all of them.
Selling noodles? But Dad, I was kind of thinking maybe
Yeah?
I
Uh-huh. Poe wants to say something to his dad, but he loses his nerve.
could also sell the bean buns. They're about to go bad.
That's my boy. I told you that dream was a sign.
Right. Yeah, haha. Glad I had it.
So there you go. We get another scene where he has an opportunity to have a growth spurt and say, hey, like, I want to go to the thing because I love Kung Fu and blah, blah.
Right.
But again, he's stuck in...
One thing that about this scene, and it's sort of related to this, was how I realized that this was an epiphany. Maybe I'll have on a different podcast because I didn't do the work for this one, but it was that how the things that need fixing and the rooting resume moments are intermingled.
Yeah.
And I was like, when I was watching, I was like, because a lot of times I tell clients that I'll be like, hey, you need things that need fixing and you need rooting resume moments. And that's about all the instruction I give them. But when I saw this, I was like, oh, and they're together. There's ways. And I almost think there's something that I can figure out that kind of instructs on how they're together, like which ones spur the other one. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Like an equation to get there.
Yeah. Cause like here, there's the things that needs fixing about being invisible to others, right? And in this case, it's not so much that he's invisible, but his dream is unspoken or invisible. Seeing the real him isn't seen by his father, but it's seen by us, the audience. We see it, and that's a rooting resume underdog kind of thing. It's also a rooting resume. They wish for something better. And they're just kind of entangled into one beat. Anyway,
it's piling on the techniques.
It is. And I think those two especially go hand in hand. And I have to pay attention to it a little more, but it was watching this that really, I was like, oh, I see. They're entangled.
And we didn't even talk about how the comedy immediately they established the Poe's dad has a comic obsession with cooking noodles.
Right.
So he's already funny every time he talks about noodles, and here it's all about the noodles again. So it's already funny.
Yep.
So just piling on the techniques there. So the third scene, this is the first growth spurt. So we've seen two where he's stuck in the old way. And here we have Poe struggling to carry the noodle cart up the steps. 2 pigs pass by. Sorry, Poe. We'll bring you back a souvenir. Poe watches as they run up the stairs. His eyes narrow. This is his heroic moment.
No, I'll bring me back a souvenir.
Poe tosses off his hat and apron and begins his ascent up the stairs. So he made a choice, right? Toward, I'm not going to be this noodle selling guy that my dad wants to be. I'm going to follow my dream. I'm going to do what I love. So it's little, but it's really important. It's that first step.
Yeah.
So number 4, this is a growth spurt, then immediately followed by a regression to the old way Poe. After a montage of clumsily trying to use tactics to get into the tournament, Poe loads fireworks to the bottom of a chair. He hops on the chair and lights the fuse. Poe's dad rushes over and tries to blow out the fuse. What are you doing?
What does it look like I'm doing? Stop. I'm going to see the Dragon Warrior.
But I don't understand. You finally had the noodle dream. Poe looks uneasy.
I lied. I don't dream about noodles, Dad.
He looks at the fuse, almost all gone. Poe holds onto the chair for dear life, closes his eyes, and braces himself for liftoff.
I love Kung Fu!
Poe finally opens his eyes. He's still on the ground. The fuse was a dud. Poe falls face first into the dirt. He looks away, embarrassed. Poe's dad holds out his apron. Come on, son, let's get back to work.
Okay.
Poe sighs, starts to reach for the apron, then boom, the rocket ignites, propelling Poe into the stadium. So there you go. We had a growth spurt. He told his dad finally what his dream was. He was getting there, right? He was moving forward, and then he just takes a huge step back. So number 5. This is all old way Poe. Oogway, he's in the tournament. He's in the center.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's looking at him. Oogway points his finger at Poe, signifying that he's the Dragon Warrior. And Poe tries to move out of the way. He keeps dodging, the significance of this moment. and saying, no, it's somebody else. So that's all Old Way Po. It's a simple beat.
And the somebody
but it's
else are his heroes.
Yeah, exactly.
Too. Like it can't be me. They're way better than me.
They're way better than me. Right. Yeah. So that's another, that's on the chart, right? That's clearly on the chart. He's regressing. Number 6, we get another growth spurt in the Jade Palace. Shifu tells Po he's not the Dragon Warrior. Po takes it in. He takes the hit, but he refuses to give up. He keeps going. Like he stays there. So that's a growth spurt. Like he could have gone back home to the ordinary world. Number 7. This is another growth spurt. So they're doing the gauntlet training. Shifu says, "Let's begin." He gestures to the gauntlet. Po's eyes go wide.
Wait. What now?
Yes, now. Unless you think the great Oogway was wrong and you are not the Dragon Warrior.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know if I can do all those moves.
Shifu walks away and Po half-heartedly follows. Well, if we don't try, we'll never know, will we? Po enters the gauntlet. He's outmatched and gets his ass kicked.
How did I do?
There is now a level 0. But I don't know about you guys. I consider this a growth spurt.
It definitely
Even though ultimately he got his ass kicked, he tried, right? So he's starting to believe.
He didn't quit. He didn't quit.
So. Right? Number 8. It's just crazy how many beats there are. Number 8, regression back to Old Way Po. Po overhears the 5 mocking him and saying he's not the Dragon Warrior. He looks at his body and sighs because he believes them. Then moments later, he talks to Crane in his room. Look, you don't belong here. Po looks stung to be hearing this from one of his heroes.
I know. You're right. My whole life I've dreamed of...
Crane stops Po before he embarrasses himself even more. No, I meant you don't belong here, in this room. This is my room. Property of Crane.
Right.
Moments later, so there's a regression, right? And then moments later, he bumps into Master Tigress, and she says, "You don't belong here."
Yeah, of course. This is your room.
I mean, you don't belong in the Jade Palace. You're a disgrace to Kung Fu, and if you have any respect for who we are and what we do, you will be gone by morning. She closes the door on Po, who slumps sadly.
Big fan. Po,
so
big
there
fan.
So there you go. We get a big regression. We get him saying out loud that he doesn't belong here, and then someone confirming it for him. Yeah. So that's a regression back to Old Way Po. Beat number 9, another Old Way Po scene. Oogway finds Po eating because he's sad. He tells Oogway he can't be the Dragon Warrior, that he's not the one. Quit, don't quit. Noodles, don't noodles. Po looks confused. You are too concerned with what was and what will be. There's a saying, yesterday is history, tomorrow is mystery, but today is a gift. That's why it's called the present. Oogway hits the tree with his staff as he walks away, and a peach falls into Po's open hand. So he's not still believing that he's the one, right?
Right.
And so that's back to the old way. Then number 10, we get a growth spurt. The 5 find Po already in the training hall. So after all that, we as an audience, everybody in the movie thinks he's going to give up. Cut to the 5 find Po already in the training hall. He's not quitting. He's ready to train. He gets his ass kicked by the 5 and then again by Shifu. And at the end of it all,
a real warrior never quits. Don't worry, I'll never quit.
So we get that exclamation, right? He's here to stay.
Right.
And that's a very measurable growth spurt again. Number 11, another growth spurt. Po makes soup for the 5. He expects them not to like it because he doesn't believe in himself. I can't make good soup.
Right.
But they do. They love it. And he says they should try his dad's recipe because it has the secret ingredient. And the 5 tell him it's delicious as is. Po's surprised, and in the script he's described as bashful. So we get a growth spurt because he's kind of feeling himself a little bit there.
And it's also the first time he connects with his heroes.
Right. Because he's worthy, right? He's kind of feeling
he did
like
something
he's worthy
right.
of their company. Yeah. So it's very measurable growth. Number 12, regression back to Old Way Po. I just love this. We got that growth spurt, and here we go back again. Shifu brings word that Tai Lung has escaped. He is coming for the Dragon Scroll, and you are the only one who can stop him. Po tries to run away. Shifu asks him not to quit.
You're not my master, and I'm not the Dragon Warrior.
This is where I forgot to put where he's like, but why did you stay?
Yeah, I stayed. I stayed because every time you threw a brick at my head or said I smelled, it hurt, but it could never hurt more than it did every day of my life just being me.
Poe looks down at the valley, then turns back.
I stayed because I thought if anyone could change me, could make me not me, it was you, the greatest kung fu teacher in all of China. Is that me still?
Yeah.
Oh, how are you going to change this? Indicates belly. Into how are you going to change this into the Dragon Warrior? How?
In frustration, Shifu yells out the answer. I don't know.
That's what I thought.
Shifu walks away, leaving the path open to Poe. So there you go.
Yeah,
You get another.
Yeah.
You get the regression because he's like, I can't do it. We just got some growth. Now we're back to regression.
In the
Number
face
13.
of ultimate adversity.
Of
You get
ultimate,
that, right.
The ultimate goal here is to defeat Tai. Yeah.
Right.
So number 13, we get a growth spurt. Shifu finds Poe eating because he's sad. Shifu has an idea. He tells Poe there's cookies on the top shelf. Poe climbs shelves to the cookies with ease. He's like, how'd you get the cookies?
I don't know. I guess, I don't know. I was getting a cookie.
And yet you are 10 feet off the ground and have done a perfect split.
No. This is just an accident.
There are no accidents. Come with me. Moments later, Shifu takes him to the Pool of Tears, the birthplace of Kung Fu. Do you want to learn Kung Fu?
Yes.
Then I am your master. And so we get this is a big progression, right? Big growth progression, but he's not there yet.
It's also, that was a growth spurt for Shifu too.
Yeah,
right?
He's got his own version of these growing pains, right? I bet you if we track these, it would track. So I just love that we keep getting a big regression and big growth because that's how you earn it, right?
Right.
That's how you make the audience feel all of this came through adversity. Number 14, the training montage is another big growth spurt. Shifu trains Poe using a new food-motivated training method. Shifu says he's been trained and offers Poe a dumpling, and we all know how that went.
Right.
Then we just got two big, huge growth spurts, and now we have another regression. Number 15, a regression back to Old Way Po. The five come back to the palace after losing a battle with Tai Lung that almost killed them. Po says he's scared. You can defeat him, Panda.
Are you kidding? If they can't, they're five masters. I'm just one me.
So it's a big, huge thing. He's like, I can't do it. I'm not the one.
Right.
He doesn't have the confidence again. Then after that, we get another growth spurt, then immediately a regression again. Shifu tells Po he's ready to read the Dragon Scroll. He gives Po the scroll. It's like this good news, bad news of his arc.
Yeah,
like,
right. Yeah, it is.
Shifu tells Po he's ready to read the Dragon Scroll. He gives Po the scroll. It's blank. Po sits heavily on the floor, dejected.
Oh, come on. Face it. Oogway picked me by accident. Of course I'm not the Dragon Warrior. Who am I kidding?
And the five don't argue. Shifu takes action and says he's going to fight Tai Lung on his own. Po worries he'll get killed, but lets him go. So we're back to Old Way Po.
Right.
Dude does not believe in himself. Number 17. We start at Old Way Po, then we have a growth spurt. Po comes back home to his dad, back to the ordinary, as Jamie said. On the way home, the villagers mock him. Look, it's the Dragon Warrior. Poe's dad finally tells him the soup's secret ingredient. Come here, the secret ingredient is nothing. There is no secret ingredient.
Wait. It's just plain old noodle soup? You don't add some kind of special sauce or something?
Don't have to. To make something special, you just have to believe it's special. Poe looks at his father with dawning realization. He picks up the scroll. For a moment, Poe stares at his reflection on the scroll. Then he smiles serenely. He gets it now.
There is no secret ingredient.
Po turns back to look at the palace. So that's a big moment.
Yeah, right.
So
right.
The one thing else, we talked about the Dark Night of the Soul. There's a thing called the Dark Night Epiphany. And that's that moment right there.
I like that, Jamie.
Yeah, it's a very common arc. Like it's the epiphany that kind of opens their eyes wide open. And it usually happens in the Dark Night of the Soul.
All right. So now we only have a couple more. So this is now finally New Way Po because he's learned, we've seen it, and from here on there is actually no regression. It's just New Way. But I like seeing all the different versions of the New Way.
Right.
Number 18, New Way Po. He believes in himself. He's confident. Tai Lung is about to kill Shifu. Po interrupts the fight. Who are you?
buddy, I am the Dragon Warrior.
And then Po bravely fights Tai Lung.
Right.
Number 19. So that's huge.
Yeah, right.
Number 19, another new way Po proving to the audience that he believes in himself. Po fights Tai Lung. He loses the scroll, and Po uses his newfound kung fu skills to keep the scroll from Tai Lung. And then number 20, another new way Po beat, believing in himself. Tai Lung gains the upper hand, gets the scroll from Po, and opens it. It's nothing?
It's okay. I didn't get it the first time either. There is no secret ingredient. It's just you.
So he's like validating what he's learned to be
Right.
true. He's showing the audience he's like, yeah, it's the Force.
He's also like confident enough to kind of try to teach Tai Lung.
Yeah, he's giving him a little wisdom, right?
Yeah,
I love that.
Right.
21, another new way Po moment. You can't defeat me. You're a big fat panda. Swing. That's how the script describes it. Swing. Po grabs Tai Lung's finger. Tai crashes to the ground. Lungs wide, eyes wide, go wide.
I'm not a big fat panda. I'm the big fat panda.
Then Po defeats Tai Lung with the whooshy finger hold.
Yeah.
And then one last beat. I think this is sort of like just like the cherry on top for it. It's really the new way snapshots. It's those old way, new way snapshots we talk about in the show. You know, these before and after. And these are all great after photos for the problems in the ordinary world that we were shown at the start. Villagers emerge from hiding. Po walks out from the mist looking very much like the warrior from the opening dream. Look, the Dragon Warrior, shouts a villager. Po's dad hugs him. That's my boy. That big, lovely Kung Fu warrior is my son. Moments later, the five call Po their master, and Po is described in the script as blushing. Then moments later, back in the palace, Shifu tells Po that he's proud. Wow. It is as Oogway foretold. You are the Dragon Warrior. You've brought peace to the valley and to me. Thank you. So there you go. We got 22 beats on that chart to earn. And that's why when he changes, it feels so earned, right?
Right.
So you can't just give us a beginning, a middle, and an end. You need growing pains in between. So thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
No, yeah, that's good. Detailed as hell, but it also speaks to the movie itself.
Yeah.
And how well it's written.
Yeah.
This kind of goes with the secret ingredients, right?
That's why I put it there.
Not the secret weapons and the MacGyver exercise.
So this is mine. I'm really not going to harp on the not so secret. It's kind of another way to codify the not so secret weapon. So I have this exercise I give my clients when they're missing a not so secret weapon, when they're missing the whooshy finger technique, when they're missing using the Force, when they're missing crossing the streams. I kind of give them this thing. How is your character going to MacGyver themselves out of the situation in a way that's what's unique and special about the movie and the character themselves? What is your character's MacGyver move? Jamie, I always make you talk about this. You've used this example between SpongeBob and James Bond and how they you want to explain that?
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? I want to like tack on another thing to this.
Please do. Yeah.
There's a thing Blake Snyder has in his book. I think he mentions it in Out of the Bottle Stories, but I think it's something that's always bouncing around my head when I'm writing third acts. But there's this notion of doing it without the magic. So it's in most movies. Now in this movie, the reveal is it's kind of weird because it's revealed that like up to this point that there is no magic, and then the magic goes up here. So anyway, it was just something like because in some ways this whole movie is about doing it without the magic. Like there is no magic at the end, but then the magic shows up at this point, which is kind of interesting. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that
you're talking about the fact.
Let's talk about the James Bond thing, and
right.
Yeah. So the idea here is when you're writing, I always say that there's an old premise: action. What is it? Character is action, right? As opposed to people talking about themselves, people talking about them. what do they actually do? That's where character truly is. Like when we talked about Danny McBride or whatever, Jack Black, like how would they do something in some ways, their essence in this character, do something different than another character? And the example I always give to classes is, let's say you had a character that had to get through a door. There's a door there and the goal is to get through for some reason. And if you had Batman do it, he'd do it differently than SpongeBob, and he'd do it differently than James Bond, right? All three would do it differently. And what it comes down to is character. All three of them are different characters. They have different ways that they approach things. And the way they do it is what really shows the kind of character they are. So anyway, that's kind of the tactics.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I wanted to give a couple examples we've talked about in our own show. So you can, if anyone likes this and hasn't heard these examples, we've done episodes on each of these movies I'm going to describe.
Right.
That's how I got the list. In Get Out, Chris uses the cotton in the chair he's tied to plug his ears and prevent himself from getting brainwashed. That works on multiple levels and it's premise specific, but he's also just simply MacGyvering him. That's his MacGyver move, right? In Pig, Nicolas Cage's chef character cooks a 3-course meal to escape the situation from the villain. On the same food topic, in The Menu, Margot's MacGyver move is she uses the chef's signature clap against him, and she asks him to make a cheeseburger because she knows it taps into something from his past. In Guardians of the Galaxy, Peter challenges the villain to a dance-off to distract him. That is Peter Quill's MacGyver move, most definitely. And recently, in The Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal Lecter steals Chilton's face and puts on his clothes in order to escape the courthouse cell. That is a MacGyver move that only
Hannibal Lecter
would do, that expresses his character. So on that note, we get 2 great examples, and they are not so secret weapons, but they don't really function the same way like the Jaws tank does. I feel like Chief Brody, that's not expressing his character. It's just the not so secret weapon. You know?
Right.
It is a MacGyver move, but these two techniques kind of are the same, but just different ways of getting there. So in Kung Fu Panda, we have imagining the dragon scroll is a cookie to climb the building and get to it before Tai Lung does. And that comes out of the confidence, right? That's the magic, Jamie. I'm just going to describe exactly how the script wrote it because I really love this. Poe slams through Tai Lung and crashes into a rock wall. The scroll flies out of his hand and lands in the mouth of an ornamental rooftop dragon. He looks back at Tai Lung, who sees where the scroll has landed. Via the magic of cookie vision, Poe effortlessly scales the building. Tai Lung is shocked. So that cookie vision is the MacGyver move that he uses that only Poe would use, right? The second one is the Wuxi finger hold. We got a nice big setup, and that's definitely a not so secret weapon. So it's just those 2.
You could argue there's a slight third one too.
Which one?
Which is the fact that his belly can deflect Tai Lung's attacks, which no one else can deflect. Only Poe.
Yeah, the magic isn't going through. I love that.
And it's kind of a not so secret weapon because his belly's established as being kind of, impenetrable throughout the movie.
But by the way, there's a callback to this in Gulliver's Travels where where a bunch of cannonballs hit Jack Black in the stomach and he repels them back at the pirate ship.
Have you actually seen Gulliver's Travels? I never did.
My son watches Gulliver's Travels all the time.
Oh, really?
And it's actually, I think you should check it out because it's this high level of filmmaking and it is weird. It's got some really weird stuff. Like the saddest person I feel sorry for to derail this whole thing is Amanda Peet. Amanda Peet is trapped in this movie. And by the way, Emily Blunt's in it. Jason Segel. There's all these people in it. But Amanda Peet is trapped in this movie. And in the end, there's this big dance number where he sings "War, What Is It Good For?" the kind of as the theme kind of comes together. And he's like, "Whoa, hoo, ah," and she's dancing in the background. And it is worth watching for that moment.
Okay.
Go watch
Why?
that.
Because
All right.
it's awkward and comedic.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All
The
right.
movie is worth watching for that moment. I'm kind of a big Amanda Peet fan, but she doesn't show up in a lot of things. But this movie, she is trapped in, and it is kind of interesting to watch. for
Okay.
that reason. Yes.
Hey. All right. Well, so yeah, I'd say watch Gulliver's Travels for that. And I'd also say we'll probably never do them on the show, but 2 and 3 are great movies. And some people arguably like 2 even more. Like
I
Kung Fu
haven't
Panda.
seen them.
Kung Fu Panda, not
yeah,
Gulliver's
Kung
Travels.
Fu Panda. Gulliver's Travels
just
2
2 and
and
3.
3.
No, Kung Fu Panda. Kung Fu Panda. They're both. It's a great trilogy of movies, and each one has their own theme, and it wraps. I haven't seen 4, so I have no opinion. But great movies, great franchise. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to add?
If you have any questions, we've had a bunch of episodes recently where we're under a time crunch, so we haven't gotten to listeners' questions. But I really would love if anybody has questions. I love to check that Gmail and get those Gmails, guys. So writersblockbusterspodcast@gmail.com if you have any questions about this episode, an old episode, anything.
I wouldn't mind, like, if we got like a backlog of questions, like a lot of people ask, we just do a question episode just for the heck of it.
I think it would be
That'd
great.
be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean-
Screenwriting topics you want us to talk about that we don't talk about all the time, anything like that.
What I'm doing basically is encourage everybody that hears my voice right now to send us questions so we can have that episode, because otherwise we can't have that episode. So.
writersblockbusterspodcast@gmail.com.
I'm going to use my burner account and write a bunch of questions.
Yeah, no, seriously. If anyone has asked a question that didn't get answered, we're under time crunches, and that's the only reason. It's not because they're not good.
We're gonna get there, and
we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll do the question episode eventually, like Jamie wants.
Yeah, I want to do that. I want to do it.
Yeah.
So send us.
I think it would be fun.
Yeah.
It would be fresh. I want to plug, since I have something to plug. I have 2 movies that are coming out on Blu-ray. One is a feature film that we made in 2009 that's finally coming to Blu-ray, called President's Day. That is at TerrorVision. I don't think it's terrorvision.com spelled out, but look up TerrorVision President's Day Blu-ray if you're interested. It is a high school slasher. It is like Election as a slasher movie. The Alexander Payne Election as a slasher movie. And then the second movie is also finally coming out to Blu-ray. We made this movie in like 2017. It's coming to Blu-ray. What Happens Next Will Scare You. And Bob helped out on this movie, so it's 2 of us are involved in this one.
And it's The Holdovers as a slasher movie.
yeah, right.
It's not Alexander Payne horror.
No.
movie.
It perfectly works. I mean, The Holdovers as a slasher movie works.
It does.
It's kind of like The Shining set in a boarding school.
Yeah.
That actually would be
there you
a
go.
great movie. So check that out too. What Happens Next Will Scare You on Blu-ray at TerrorVision.
Cool. Jamie?
I have another Bob project to plug. A week from now, March 19th, the first episode of a podcast called Black Velvet Fairies comes out, and you may just hear Bob's voice in that first episode on March 19th.
What do you know about that? Because you
I
haven't had
didn't know
enough.
you were in it, dude. I'm so pumped.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I am in it.
He is in
Wait,
it.
Jamie directed, Bob starring?
Absolutely.
This is fucking awesome.
In an audio.
In an audio drama. It's an audio drama, kind of a supernatural thriller. There's a trailer online right now if you're hearing this before March 19th, 2024. So there is a trailer online at Black Velvet Fairies. It's everywhere you find podcasts. It's on the PRX distribution network or whatever that is. But anyway, check it out. First episode of 13. So every week they'll be spooling out one more episode, and the first one with Bob will be out this week.
I'm
Make it
so
sound I'm not the
excited.
main character or anything. So don't think that.
Heavy on the Bob this week. It's heavy. If you want to hear Bob, this is your chance.
Is
The
Bob
lack of my
Barry?
voice
Oh
on the
my
internet.
God.
Finally, Jamie fixed it. Yeah, but I guess that would be my plug too. Everything they just said, the stuff I was involved with. So go do all that. Yeah, I think that's everything, guys.
Yeah, thanks for listening,
good.
everyone. This
Yeah.
was fun.
Questions. Send questions.
Send questions. Okay. Bye. Hey, this is Bob Rose, and thank you for listening to Writers Blockbusters. If you'd like to financially support the show, please consider joining my Patreon. I've been producing the podcast for several years completely out of pocket, and I'd like to keep producing it ad-free and no longer at a loss. If you'd like to help, head on over to patreon.com/Bob Rose Sucks. That's right, Bob Rose Sucks. And if you want the one and only Jimmy George to help polish up that writing project you're kind of struggling with, head on over to scriptbutcher.com. As a listener, you already know he's the best there is, scriptbutcher.com. You can also support the show by simply sharing it or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate both. Thank you for listening, and see you next episode.